Goombario as a partner is very simple. About all he can really do is just headbonk, a skill not too dissimilar to Mario's jump attack. But how far can he really go only being able to headbonk? Let's find out. Goombario's adventure begins rather simply, with him betraying his own kind and knocking out Goombas we find left and right. To survive against Red and Blue Goomba, however, this is sadly necessary. There is a close call badge on the way to the Red and Blue Goomba fight, but trust me, relying on luck is not worth it. Just grind to level 3, level up HP twice, and be done with it. With 20 HP max, you're guaranteed to win this fight as long as you focus your efforts on one Goomba before attacking the other. This also leads nicely into the fight with the Goomba King himself. Despite being an actual boss, there is one element that makes this fight significantly easier than the last one, namely the Goomba tree behind the Goomba King. Goombario can attack it, and you instantly do 3 damage to the Goomba King and the Red and Blue Goomba who only have 2 HP left. From there, 7 more head bonks and the Goomba King is knocked out. And with a prologue finish, that means we have access to action commands. Since Goombario can target only one foe at a time, this makes him pretty bad against multiple enemies. Though compared to the other partners, he does have some interesting advantages over them, though it will be a while before we get to those advantages. At the very least, he has no problem with the Magic Koopa. Now for most required fights in Chapter 1, Goombario has no issues with them. Fuzzies only can do 1 damage to Mario, and that's only if you don't guard. But they also have 3 HP, and Goombario only can do 2 damage per turn. So trust me, it does take a while to actually win. Meanwhile, Goombario has no problem hitting Koopas that are in the air, so the trap in the Koopa Bros fortress is not a problem for him either. It helps also the Bob-ombs have 0 defense in this game, so headbutt can hurt them as well. Unfortunately for Goombario, however, that's as far as he can go in Chapter 1. Near the end of the fortress, you're required to fight 3 Bill Blasters. Bill Blasters are an enemy that not only have defense, but they cannot be flipped over to reduce their defense to 0. So if you were asking yourself if it was possible to beat Paper Mario 64 with only Goombario, well, your answer is no. But no, that's not the point of this series now, isn't it? How many bosses can Goombario beat all by himself? Well, I'll tell you one thing. He cannot beat Koopa Bros at all. Once again, the Trojan Bowser has 1 defense point. As such, Goombario cannot make any progress in this fight at all. Even if he could get past the Trojan Bowser, he can't hurt the Koopa Bros. It's worth knowing, by the way, that even if a Super Block was available before this fight, Goombario still would not be able to win. He'd be able to make them tumble, but that's really all he'd be able to do. And yes, you're seeing this right, the Koopa Bros can lose their balance if they're hit by head bonks. The only reason this is possible, however, is because the headbonk I'm using is at super rank. Yeah, keep this in mind, but the Koopa Bros do have defense when they're stacked up on each other. But that's it for Chapter 1. An impossible task, because Goombario cannot do damage to enemies with defense. And unfortunately, Goombario's struggles do not end there either. On the way back to Toad Town, Junior Troopa ambushes us. Unlike our first encounter, he has defense now, and as a result, that means that Goombario cannot hurt him at all. Not a good start. Not a good start at all. But, maybe Chapter 2 will be better for him? I mean, there is Buzzar, but she's an optional boss, so she doesn't have to be beaten right away. Instead, we're able to hack through the dry desert, reach the oasis, and rig up Goombario thanks to a super block. Not only does Goombario's attack power increase by 1, but he also gains a move called Charge. For each time Charge is used, up until his next attack, Goombario's attack power will increase by 2 points. Most bosses we encounter for a while have 0 defense, so it's not really relevant. What is relevant, however, is Buzzar. As long as Mario's guards are okay, we'll be able to win this fight no problem. Though Goombario is susceptible to being knocked out for a few turns by Buzzar's wind attack. Mario did take quite a beating, but thanks to damage dodge, he was able to survive with his lifestream still intact. Now, with increased attack power and the new move that allows Goombario to overwhelm bosses with high defense, things seem to be looking up for him. Unfortunately, we next up have the Dry Ruins. It's here we're forced to fight 3 Poke Mummies, and well, they're spiky, so Goombario cannot hurt them at all. And to add insult to injury, the swoops cannot be hurt by Goombario either. Yeah, not a pretty look, huh? And yet, he has no problem dealing with Stone Chomps. Stone Chomps have only 1 defense, so Goombario with his 2 attack can actually hurt them. And then there's Tutton Koopa. Goombario is a very straightforward partner to win this fight with. A few head bonks will do the trick. It will still take a few turns because Goombario's attack power isn't that high, but with good guarding, this really should not take any more than 10 turns. Altogether, I'd say Goombario did pretty well in this chapter. Chapter 3 though, despite it being super gloomy, is actually rather optimistic for Goombario. The first important fight here is Junior Troopa. He still has increased defense, but is now airborne. This, however, does not stop Goombario from charging up a storm and then attacking with a lot of attack power under his belt. Since Junior Troopa has defense, it is more effective right now to charge up a bunch and then attack in one fell swoop to knock him out as soon as possible. This way, we manage to accumulate a bunch of damage and then attack all at once, instead of doing only 2 damage per turn. I mean, I don't know about you, but I'd rather do 38 damage in 10 turns than do, say, what, 20 damage? Yeah, 20. You know, it's hard to do math in your head while you're trying to commentate without using a script. Also, an important detail to note is that we have access to live streams now. With our inventory full of them, survivability is no longer a problem for us. And just in time too, because the next boss is the Heart of Tubba Blubba. The scariest thing here has to be the absolutely nuclear damage the heart can do with its charge. But right now, all that really matters is that Goombario can hit the heart. And he can. I used up a few live streams on the way, sure, but hey, a W is a W, so I'm not complaining. And Tubba Blubba himself is just a sad sack of blubber. All around, this was a very successful chapter for Goombario. This brings us, however, to Chapter 4. For Goombario's challenge, Shy Guy's toy box is rather interesting. I might fight the anti-guy later, but right now there's really no point. All you get for beating him was a Power Plus badge, and I can't use Mario in battle anyway. Actually, I want to focus on the sewers beneath Toad Town first and the blooper within them. Blooper is not threatening. In reality, it's weaker than Buzzar, having less HP, less attack power, and 0 potential to hurt your partners. Electro Blooper and Super Blooper may be more interesting, but the normal Blooper is not at all. But the next required boss fight to do with the Big Lantern Ghost is a very problematic boss for most partners. In this room, it's dark, and as a result, you must attack the lantern at least twice before you can see Big Lantern Ghost and attack him. Compared to most partners, Goombario was very lucky. His headbonk is able to strike the lantern twice, making it just bright enough that you can see the Big Lantern Ghost and attack him. But of course, you also have to make sure you guard the light flash that he sometimes does to stun your partner. If you fail to guard the blinding light attack, your partner becomes stunned for 2 turns. And just like that, you lose your chance to attack Big Lantern Ghost directly. So how the fight goes is that you attack the lantern, you guard the flash of light, then you attack Big Lantern Ghost himself. He blows the lantern out, you make the lantern bright again, he then attacks Mario, and then you attack Big Lantern Ghost again before the cycle repeats itself. Repeat until death, and you beat the Big Lantern Ghost. Goombario does have issues with the General Guy fight, however. Don't get me wrong, he can attack literally every enemy on the screen, but it is a pain being able to target only one foe at a time. Not to mention his damage output is pretty dang slow. But even though Goombario will take longer than most other partners, the Shy Squad, the Stilt Guys, the Shy Stack, they all can be defeated. General Guy himself and his tank though is a little more tricky. His tank has 2 defense, which matches Goombario's 2 attack power. So the only way to win this fight is to charge a bunch and then attack him in one fell swoop to knock him out. You may have also noticed I destroyed the light bulb. I really am not confident in my ability to guard that lightning attack, so I rather would destroy it as soon as possible. This fight absolutely took a while to win. But with enough charge and a few live shrooms, just a few, we came out of this fight victorious. And then the very next fight was against the Fuzzipede, which we cannot do with Goombario at all. Something interesting I learned is that not only can you not even attack the Fuzzipede when it's dark, you can't even encounter the Fuzzipede when it's dark. Even when he hops right on Mario's sprite, the fight doesn't trigger. Very much a shame, if I may add. Who's that partner? And things don't quite pick up for Chapter 5 either. For starters, while rescuing the Yoshi Kids in the Jade Jungle, Goombario has no issue fighting either the ambushes or the Putrid Piranhas. Deep within Jade Jungle, however, there is a fight with the 3 Putrid Piranhas and the White Magic Koopa. The foe of interest here just so happens to be on the far right of the screen. White Magic Koopas are an example of an enemy that might prove to be too difficult for one partner to handle by themselves. The reason for this is simple. They can restore HP, and so if your partner cannot do damage faster than they can heal it off, then the fight itself becomes all down to luck. And it being luck outside the partner's control is not a good sign at all for their viability. Now this doesn't stop Goombario, of course, because he's able to use charge, and after 2 charges, his headbang does just enough damage to kill the Magic Koopa for max HP. And from there, the Putrid Piranhas fall one by one. So at the very least, Goombario has no issues here. Not too much later we get the Ultra Zone, which means that Goombario can be ranked up one last time. He learns Multi-Bonk, which is basically Power Bounce but slightly worse. For 3 FP, you repeatedly Multi-Bonk an enemy until you miss an Adject command. Every subsequent hit does 1 less damage than the last. Now, unfortunately for Goombario, this new move doesn't really help him at all for the Chapter 5 bosses. For example, Junior Troopa. Once again, he's airborne, but with a certain sick little twist for Goombario here. As Junior Troopa spawns his wings, he also gets a spike atop his head, which can only mean one thing. Yep, Goombario can no longer hurt Junior Troopa while he's airborne, making this fight once again impossible. Not necessarily ideal, but it's not the end of the world either. After all, this is the only fight with Junior Troopa where he starts with a spike on his head. But more on that later. For now, we have to fight Electro Blooper, and this one's actually required to fight. The reason why is because the route to actually get the Chapter 5's Warp Pipe is also the only way forward to reach Chapter 7 without using glitches. In any case, Electro Blooper is pretty easy. Goombario can't touch this enemy while it's electrified, but he doesn't really have to. When he does electrify himself, all Goombario has to do is just use charge and then attack next turn. He does lose out on some damage though because Electro Blooper has 0 defense and charge only increases attack by 2, but it's a lot better than losing your turn to attack by attacking an enemy that's dangerous to touch. And this fight otherwise is entirely possible for Goombario to do, unlike the very next boss fight against Lava Piranha. The first phase, everything is fine. Lava Piranha has no fire on his bulb, so Goombario is free to attack away until he goes down. But then phase 2 starts and everything goes to crap. Because during phase 2, Goombario can't do anything. Being that now Lava Piranha is on fire, yeah, Goombario's head bonk will just have him take damage instead. And that fire never goes out. Needless to say, we have to hightail it out of here. We are not winning this. Altogether, Chapter 5 was pretty bad for Goombario, but Chapter 6 was at least something decent for him. Actually, Chapter 6 is an inverse of Chapter 5. Whereas in Chapter 5, the bosses were impossible, but the enemies were just easy for him. In Chapter 6, the enemies are impossible, but the bosses aren't. First off though, Super Blooper. As absolutely bonkers as her attack power can be against me, my badges just do a very good job at keeping me alive. And if those fail, I still have live streams to keep me going, because as we all know, I suck at blocking in this game. I really freaking do. After a while I got impatient, so I used Charge a Bunch and then used Multi-Bonk. It didn't quite finish her off, but one more head bonk and she'd be sleeping with the fishes. And yeah, this may not have been the most exciting fight to talk about, but it was either this or the Monty Mole fight in Petunia's room. Here are 2 points of interest for you. 1, obviously every partner can beat this fight since they're all grounded. And 2, I honestly think you deserve better. After all, the next required fight with some enemies gives me something to actually talk about. Before entering this maze, 2 Lakitus challenge you in a fight. But not only are there Lakitus, there are also Spinies. As you can see, Spinies have spikes on their shells, which means Goombario can't hurt them. Moreover, Lakitus are also capable of dropping Spinies onto the ground. So unfortunately, any fights with Lakitus are impossible for Goombario. At least unless your name is Lackluster, or Michael, or Spike. Okay, Spike, I'll call you Spike. Yeah, despite being a Lakitu, his Spiny eggs don't actually hatch into Spinies. So slowly but surely, Goombario is able to win. And soon enough, we reach the Chapter 6 boss, Huff and Puff. As of this very moment, I had no shame in admitting this. This is probably the hardest boss in the run. With how this boss is designed, having only one character that can fight at a time makes things very complicated. Oftentimes, Goombario can do a lot of damage in one turn, just to have a lot of it healed up the very next turn. This is because after Goombario hits Huff and Puff, Tough Puffs spawn. And every now and then, Huff and Puff will absorb the Tough Puffs that he lost, and restore HP equal to both the size of each Tough Puff, as well as just how many have spawned out of him. So the 60 HP he's shown to have is actually rather deceptive. So yeah, hurting him is pretty hard, but he also hits very hard too. It really sucks having only 10 HP, and no real way to recover it either. Because when you take the damage from both the Tough Puffs and add it to Huff and Puff's own damage output too, let's just say it's a good thing that sometimes Huff and Puff will choose to charge up electricity instead. Because otherwise, it's likely I'm going to lose life streams every turn. It's also a good thing we have charge. Without this move, I don't think any of our damage would be able to stick. And that's not even mentioning Multi-Bonk, which of course was also really helpful here. I went in this fight with 10 life shrooms. I came out of it with only 2. Though to be fair, I did not fight this boss optimally either. Then again, to be optimal is to be boring, so heck that. I mean, I could have used charge for 9 turns straight and then used Multi-Bonk for a 3 cap, doing 21, 20, and 19 damage apiece. But where's the fun in that? Besides, there's 0 RNG in this fight, so it wasn't that unreasonable. All in all, I'd say Chapter 6 was pretty good for Goombario, though it sure could have been better. Now, before we venture into Chapter 7, there are a few more fights I want to look at first. But before you ask, Goombario has no issues beating Anti-Guy at all. By now on the run, as long as your attack power is at least 5, you will win even if all your life streams run out. And Goombario does 6 damage per turn against an enemy with only 50 HP. Maybe the Anti-Guy unit would be interesting, but for this, let's just put a footnote. I'm actually more interested in the Dojo. I won't talk about every fight here because most of them don't really matter, but know that Chan, Lee, and the first 2 Master fights are entirely possible. The only one that really matters is Master 3, because he has 99 HP, 1 defense point, and does a ton of damage in a single turn. Even still, look in a mirror, you see Goombario, and he's ready to clean house. Since Master has defense, it makes a lot of sense to use Charge a Bunch, and then give him a whole lot of head in one fell swoop. In just 1 turn, Master went from 99 HP to 0. How is that for using your noggin? Just like that, Goombario graduated. See here? He's got a diploma. I guess while we can, I'll talk about Kenshi Koopa too. Now, unlike most other Koopas, it takes more than 1 hit from above to flip him over. It takes at least 2. Moreover, while Kenshi Koopa is standing up, he has 6 defense. When on his back though, he has 3. But since Goombario's headbutt only hits 2 times, it really doesn't matter because you can't take advantage of the latter. And Multi-Bonk would just start doing 0 damage too because it would only have 1 attack power, which even if it was at 3, it would only match his defense by then. But none of that matters because Goombario has this move called Charge. And you know, some weird part of me did not want to just charge up a bunch and then just use Multi-Bonk to finish him off in 1 turn. No, periodically I would charge a bunch, then use Multi-Bonk, and I keep missing after 2. I don't really know what was wrong with me, but I just could not for the life of me get a single good Multi-Bonk off until the very end of the fight, where by then it didn't really matter anymore. It was an easy fight regardless though, like there was no question about it. With all the life streams we have, it wasn't a question of if, but just when. It's Goombella! What do she and Goombario have in common? And Win continued to be the name of the game through Chapter 7 as well, where after Mario is exonerated of clipping a penguin's flippers, we fight Junior Troopa. He has 50 HP but only 1 defense. Safe to say, all it takes is a single Multi-Bonk after a bunch of charges to put him on ice. And on that note, Monstar was also fairly easy to handle. The only thing you need to beat this boss is being able to hit enemies that are airborne. He has only 20 HP and 1 attack power, but no defense. Any partner that's not named Kooper can do this. As for Crystal Palace, Goombario does excellently here. There are 3 fights against White Clubbas, and there's also a different colored Magic Koopa alongside them to fight with. And all 3 are possible. For the Black Magic Koopa, invisibility is only temporary, so after it wears off, Goombario can finish off the White Clubba. Back in Chapter 5, Goombario also demonstrated he has no issues with White Magic Koopas. Except now, Goombario has higher attack power, and funny enough, despite the massive spiky club, Goombario can target Clubbas just fine. Safe to say, Green Magic Koopas, which all they really do is increase defense by 1 per turn, not really threatening. And I don't think I have to explain why either. There is also some Duplighosts you can fight here, but there's also 4 you can fight in Chapter 8. I'll talk about them now though to save on time later. Fighting Duplighosts just poses the question of how well Goombario can handle fighting himself. And since he's just a Goomba with no especially interesting characteristics, yeah, I'd say he does just fine. Finally, there's the Crystal King, which can be a very annoying boss for most partners. Goombario, however, does not care about the fact that he can heal himself or the illusions he can summon. Charge for about 1 to a dozen turns, use Multi-Bonk, and you win. Since the alternative is using a Headbonk which does 2 damage per turn, and also having to guess at some point in the fight which Crystal King is the real Crystal King and which ones are the illusions, I think taking the easy way out here is plenty justified. And if you disagree, well, tell me in the comments so I can tell the illusions from the real deal, without process of elimination. I grew up playing Crash Bandicoot. I played through enough trial and error. And that wraps up Chapter 7, and leads us beautifully into Chapter 8. Yep, we're just about ready to jump right in. No more optional bosses, just a few required fights moving forward. And to start, we have some fights with some Koopa Trolls and the Magic Koopa. And if you know anything about spiky enemies, you already know how this is gonna end. In short, not pretty. Goombario cannot target spiky enemies, and this makes the fight impossible. Not a good start. And by the looks of it, the Anti-Guy unit would not be much better for him either. I mean, it's possible, of course it is, but the Anti-Guy unit does a ton of damage in very little time. Each Anti-Guy has 50 max HP and can do either 10 or 12 damage every turn they attack. This can lead to a disgusting amount of damage on the first turn. Where at least while in danger, I have Last Stand to back me up, but early out of the fight when my HP is high, It is simply dreadful. Like, if after a live shroom, the anti-guys just choose to use 3 aqua jumps back to back to back, in one turn, a live stream just gets completely deleted, just like that. And it really sucks for Goombario too, because he can only target 1 per turn. Most other partners, however, are blessed with being able to target multiple targets at once, so Goombario really has no time to mess around either. He has to get it in gear and go for kills as quickly as he possibly can. And it doesn't help that multi-bonk, to my knowledge, is actually bugged in this game. I don't know the science behind this move myself, but from what I heard, the more you use multi-bonk, the less bonks you'll be able to get with a single usage of the move. And this hurts Goombario's damage potential drastically. It's really sad when you think about the fact that this is also not even the worst RNG I could have gotten. Like, worst case scenario, this fight, despite the fact that Goombario can actually hurt the anti-guy unit, could have required too much luck to actually win consistently. And I can say this because by the end of the fight, I had 0 live streams left. Yes, you heard me right. Goombario actually ran out of live streams during this fight. I won't say it's entirely Goombario's fault because, of course, human error is a thing, but I honestly think it's safe to say that if Goombario was only able to get it this close, then it's a sign of a very real weakness that he has. Now we've reached Junior Troopa number 6, the final fight with Junior Troopa himself. And good thing, because I highly doubt that Goombario would be able to beat the Koopa Bros after the first battle with them in Chapter 1. Now, Junior Troopa has a lot of potential to be a very problematic boss fight, but you can't sell me with potential. Once Junior Troopa's HP falls below 36, he'll start flying, and he has a spike from Chapter 5's fight as well. This would make it impossible for Goombario, but he has this move called Charge. And fun fact, this is the only way Goombario can win this fight. What you have to do is charge a few turns, maybe about, let's say, 10, likely less, and then use multi-bonk with a lot of charge under your belt. Worst case, Junior Troopa will have low HP, but will also then fall to his wizard phase, where he won't be flying. Best case, you KO him right there and then. And it just so happened I got the best case scenario. But trust me, this fight can be very much impossible for certain partners. As a matter of fact, I recommend you look back to Chapter 6, and just remember how helpless Goombario was when fighting Spinies. And with that, this leaves us with only one last fight that's even realistically possible for any partner, Hallway Bowser. On the surface, he is strictly weaker than Junior Troopa. However, after turn 2, he will use his Star Rod to activate his Star Shield. Under Star Shield, some of Bowser's attacks will hit twice as hard. For example, instead of Fire Breath doing 8 damage, it will do 16. So in theory, if you got really unlucky, you could just lose live stream after live stream after live stream every turn if you really wanted to. The only way that Mario can survive Bowser's Fire Breath under Star Shield properties is if either A, he has exactly 5 HP with Last Stand equipped, alongside all of your defensive badges except for Fire Shield, or B, you're at 10 HP, you have all of your defensive badges active, as well as Fire Shield and Suji's Water Block. Moreover, under Star Shield, Bowser has a whopping 4 defense, and it cannot be ignored by any partners at all. On one hand, this does mean that literally every partner except for Bo can still hurt Bowser. On the other hand, it's a very much uphill battle for every partner as well. And to keep things fair, I'm not allowing Mario to use his Star Beam either. Thanks to Charge, Goombario can hurt Bowser, but it takes multiple Charge for him to do any substantial damage. And you have to be careful, because if you use Charge and Bowser uses his Star Wave to hit your partner as well, that actually wipes out Goombario's charge buffs. So, don't be greedy. Honestly though, I think Goombario did pretty well here, all things considered. By the end of the fight, I had I think 4 live streams left, so that's actually a pretty respectable number of live streams to end the fight on. Now, despite being completely humiliated by my partner of all characters, and not even by Mario himself, Bowser's a sore loser, and he takes Princess Peach to the top of the castle and tells us to fight him there and then instead. But the way I see it, he lost fair and square, and that's it for this challenge. Now, I'm certain that at least some of you are disappointed by the fact that we're not fighting Final Bowser in this video, but literally no partner can do that fight all by themselves. Bowser's defense becomes literally infinite in the final battle, so you need Mario's Star Beam and then Peach Beam to make any progress in that fight. And by then, it is strictly easier than this fight was already. So with all that said, how did Goombario do? Assuming my math is correct, Goombario's ending score is 25.25 points. Honestly, not a bad score, and it at least puts him above Bombette, Bo, and Kooper. Goombario's only method of doing damage isn't really the best when dealing with enemies that are protected, like say with spikes or fire. but it's barely serviceable thanks to charge. Like without charge, Goombario would have a very similar weakness to Bow, but as is, he's just ever so barely above Bombette. And that's it for our young scholar. Next week will be lackluster. Thank you to Zezmog9 for playing along. And kudos to you that managed to find a hint despite the fact that that hint wasn't really planned. I'm proud of you all. Now next week, there won't be any partners to guess, because as you can already imagine, the next partner will be Sushi. And I just would like to take the time to mention this, but if you want to support the channel, one of the best things you can do is just immediately watch one of my other videos. And right here, I have a playlist full of solo runs through Paper Mario 64 for you to enjoy. So if you can't give me money, that's fine, but I would love your time. In any case, I'll see you next week.